Welcome, everyone. We are going to start momentarily. All right, why don't we get started? Thanks for being here, everybody. So if you're new, Pete, actually, you can go right on to the next slide, I think. So if you're new to CIRA events, welcome. We are the Center for Interdisciplinary Research on AIDS based at the Yale School of Public Health. CIRA is New England's only National Institute of Mental Health funded HIV/AIDS research center. We provide HIV-related resources, skills, services, training, and professional networking opportunities to HIV researchers and practitioners who contribute to advances in HIV prevention and treatment and health equity. You can go to the next slide, thanks. Since you will ask, slides and a link to the recording, I believe we are recording, will be shared by email if you registered, and you did since you're here, and then we'll also get those up on the CIRA website. So just a quick overview. We've got an hour together. Dr. Pachenkis will be our moderator. We've got an overview by Dr. Allison. We're going to hear some advice from awardees, Drs. Brown and Ingram, and we'll try to save questions for the end, but feel free to put some in the chat if you think you might forget something. And we'll have a very brief evaluation pop up at the conclusion. Next slide, please. So this is part of our CIRA series. Wow. For early career scientists that we started in fall 2023 as a collaborative with the Yale Global HIV/AIDS Research Network, or Garner, which is hosted by the Institute for Global Health. We've done several previous events that are listed here. You can check some materials from those out on our website. And if there's other topics you think would be helpful, feel free to suggest them in the evaluation or in the chat. Next slide, please, Pete. So this is the lineup of our speakers. I'm going to hand it over to our moderator for today, Dr. John Pachenkis, who is professor in the School of Public Health at Yale. He is a director of Yale's LGBTQ Mental Health Initiative and the director of CIRA's Development Core.
Thanks, Daniel, and good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many people here from the CIRA community and beyond. I want to first thank the many people at CIRA who made this seminar possible, including Dini Harsano, Katie Wang, Luke Davis, Aaron Nicholson, Daniel, and Pete Donahue, of course, with the support of CIRA's director, Trace Kershaw. So this panel intends to serve as a way to educate our community about diversity supplements, which can provide a really generous amount of support to qualified junior scholars from existing NIH grants held by PIs. I know that several of us here at CIRA have benefited both as mentees and mentors from these important awards, which is a great program run by NIH. So to educate us all about diversity supplements and creating and submitting a compelling application, we have three esteemed speakers, including Dr. Susanna Allison from NIMH, who oversees a portfolio of these awards, and Drs. Sean Estelle Brown, an associate professor at Rollins College, and Dr. LaJoya Ingram, an associate research scientist and community practitioner and researcher, who will share their successful experience with diversity supplements and offer advice from an inside perspective. So Dr. Allison will present first. She's a program officer at the National Institute of Mental Health within the Division of AIDS Research. She's also the training director for the division and for the Center of Global Mental Health Research. She oversees a portfolio of research and training grants focused on HIV prevention and care, mostly among young people. Prior to working at NIMH, Dr. Allison worked with children and families affected by HIV in Baltimore, Miami, and Washington, D.C. She has a PhD in clinical child psychology from GW. And Dr. Allison, you've guided many of us at CIRA in our own grant concepts and applications. And it's so nice to be able to benefit today from your continued generosity as you share your insight and recommendations on creating and submitting successful diversity supplements. So thank you so much for joining us, and we all look forward to learning from you.
Great. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's great to see so many familiar faces. And I'm so happy to be able to join you all today to talk about diversity supplements from NIMH. I'll share some slides. It might go a little fast through them because a lot of them are just like packed with information about some of the more nitty-gritty pieces. And as Dr. Patingas had mentioned, the slides, or maybe it was, sorry, Daniel, but the slides will be available. So don't feel like you will be missing out on particular pieces of information, because I will be sharing the slides with you all. So it's really to kind of give you a bigger picture of kind of all the components that go into it and the things you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about applying and when you're putting together an application to submit. All right, let me share my slides. All right. There we go. Can you see them? Great. All right, so that's me. Here's a little overview of what I'm going to touch on. Just a little shout out for a talk that's coming up, a webinar that NIMH is hosting next week, focusing on mechanisms of risk and resilience for mental health in individuals of Mexican origin webinar. This isn't something out of the Division of HIV or Division of AIDS research. This is out of our Office on Disparities and Workforce Diversity, but thought I would still share in case there are folks who would be interested in attending. So this slide is just a nice reminder for myself that NIH is a big place. It is, it's made up of 27 institutes and centers, of which NIMH is one. So I'm going to be talking about diversity supplements at NIMH. Of course, NIH doesn't always make things the easiest, and there are different processes that exist at the different institutes. So I'd really encourage you to, if you're going to be applying for a diversity supplement and the parent grant is situated at a different institute or center, please be sure to reach out and confirm their process for receiving diversity supplements, because there's a fair amount of there definitely a number of differences from what I've heard from colleagues around NIH. So who can diversity supplements support? Diversity supplements can support actually anyone from high school all the way through an early stage investigator. So it's quite a nice wide range of career stages for folks that can be supported on a diversity supplement. We also have a supplement which is called a re-entry or reintegration supplement. Those are supplements for individuals who have been out of research for a number of years or for some time due to a whole host of different reasons. So I encourage you to look more into that as an opportunity for a supplement if that is something that pertains to you or to someone that you know. So what does a diversity supplement do? Basically, it provides an administrative supplement to an existing grant. So it does not stand alone. It is a component of an existing grant, or we call them parent grants, that's already funded by NIH. And it helps to support the training, the research training of someone from an underrepresented group. And that happens through mentorship, through training, and through engagement in research. And as I said, it includes anyone from high school through early career. And we'll talk a little bit more about what makes someone eligible. Sorry, there we go. Basically at NIMH anyway, we can accept diversity supplement applications at any time during the year. And we try to review them on a monthly basis. That does not mean your application will be reviewed within a month. There are multiple levels and multiple people who need to review your application. So we do say that it takes 2 to 3 months for an application to go through review. But we have our diversity supplement review meetings once a month. There is a caveat there that if you submit after April 1st, you will be considered for funding in the next fiscal year. And just as a reminder, NIH's fiscal year runs from October 1st through the end of September. And not much happens at NIH in October for various reasons. Systems are being rebooted, and so there are some limitations to what we can do during that month. So if you submit after April, really consider that you would have a start date of in December at the earliest. And please ask any questions. I am not sure if I will totally be able to monitor, but if someone sees any questions, I'm happy to answer them along the way. I don't need to wait till the end. This is a great table, and I have to really give a big thanks to my colleague, Tatiana Meza Savera, because she's the one who created these slides, and they're really, it's a great way to distill all of the information that's included in the diversity supplement program announcement on the NIMH website about diversity supplements. So this just breaks down sort of the duration of time that's allowable for each career stage, as well as the different budget caps. So as you can see, the travel amount that's allowable increases as you kind of move up from undergrad to an investigator, as does the salary. There is a huge range of grants that are eligible to some, for diversity supplements. There are really very few that are not on this list. So that's usually not a barrier to submitting. Though I have to say that it's more common for diversity supplements to be requested and awarded to longer grants, like an R34 or an R1, because of the time that we really want someone to be involved and on that grant. Oftentimes a year is just not sufficient, especially for someone who's in graduate school, a postdoc, or an early career investigator. So really want folks to have a good amount of time to learn from the folks on the team, to get embedded, to be able to do some of their own, work that's part of that parent grant. So while an R03 and an R21 are listed, those are very rarely used actually for diversity supplements. Just to run through, NIH has posted our notice on interest in diversity. And so these are some of the different criteria that may make someone eligible to apply. So it would be, and I should note, diversity supplements are limited to individuals who are US citizens or permanent residents. And then Some of the eligibility criteria could include being from a racial or ethnic group that's underrepresented in the research workforce. And I should note that it used to be that NIH sort of was the gatekeeper of kind of who was eligible, who wasn't. Now we really ask that the institution make the case in the application for why someone might be from a racial or ethnic group that is underrepresented. You're also eligible if you have a disability, and there's more information around exactly how that's defined on the website that I can share. And there's a link here on this slide, so you'd be able to link directly to that definition, as well as individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. And the definition for a disadvantaged background is actually expanded a couple of years ago. They noticed that not a lot of folks were actually applying under this criteria, so they tried to expand it. So again, encourage you to sort of look at what are the different ways that folks could qualify based on coming from a disadvantaged background. Again, we are not the ones sort of saying you are in or out for this. It is on the institution to identify individuals who are underrepresented in the workforce. And that includes folks who are LGBTQ+ or sexual and gender minorities. All right, so now you've determined that you're eligible to apply. What's the best way to go? I mean, I think there's a few different ways to kind of go about this. One could be, you sort of would like to apply and you need to find someone who has a grant. You can do that using NIH Reporter, which is a great way. It's sort of like the Google of NIH grants. So it's a wonderful way to be able to find grants that are currently being funded that may fit within your area of interest. This includes the PI, so you can reach out to them and inquire about that as an opportunity. Obviously, if you're within the institution, you would have more direct access and connections to individuals within your institution. Then once you've sort of found someone that you would like to work with, and looks like a great fit, then the best next thing is to sort of come up with a draft, a short draft of what your thoughts are and your plans together for what you would accomplish during that diversity supplement. So that should include the training goals, the research plan, and the mentorship team. Once you have that draft, then I would reach out to the program officer on the grant, and at NIMH, also the training director for that division. And I can include the links to the different training directors at NIMH, so you know who best to reach out to, or you can also ask the program officer. And then we will sort of help you in terms of navigating that application process and provide feedback during the process. This really should be a joint effort. So this should not be something that the applicant does independently. It needs to be done jointly with the program or with the principal investigator of the grant. So just a little bit of a timeline for putting together one. Really, give yourself enough time. It is tough to be able to pull together all of this information and make the most compelling case for yourself and for your training, and work out what your training goals are going to be and your training activities. So really make sure you're giving yourself enough time. So giving yourself like 5 months, reaching out to NIH program staff, writing the application, with the PI, having other people review it, including the program officer or the training director at NIMH. And then, making sure that you submit with enough time to address any challenges that come up, and really trying not to get it in after April 1st if you want to be considered for funding this fiscal year. These are just some things to look out for in the program announcement for the diversity supplement program, and things to remember. Always reach out to a program officer well before you're going to submit an application. Really make sure that all components have been addressed, and that there are no concerns around eligibility for the candidate or any issues with the parent grant that may preclude a diversity supplement being awarded. That would include making sure that there's enough time left on the grant to support you. We cannot consider no cost extensions in that period of time. So it's the end date that is listed in your grant, not any no cost extensions that you would be taking. There also have been times when NIMH is concerned about issuing a diversity supplement when there is a large unobligated balance on the parent grant, or there are issues with delays to the parent grant. And then also, it's one thing I just want to raise on this slide is that it's really important that the research that you are proposing be within the scope of the parent grant. So you can't be expanding what the parent grant is already doing. You really need to think about, like, what is the parent grant already doing? And we can talk about, and it'll be great to hear from the existing, the diversity supplement awardees about maybe the research that they have been engaged with, and how that falls within scope. And I'm happy to give some examples as well at that time. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because this just sort of lays out the different components. And as I said, you'll be getting these slides, but this just runs through all the different application components. So you want to talk about, there's 6-page section, which includes the research, the training plan, the mentorship plan, and a timeline for doing all of these activities. Then there's the candidate statement, which is 3 pages. And I always like to tell people, this is sort of what this does is this is really talking about you. It doesn't have to include any personal information, but this is about where you've come from. Like, what are all of your research experiences to date? What are the things that you really understand now? What are areas of expertise for you? And then where do you want to go? And what do you want to be, like in the future, directly after this diversity supplement, and maybe in like 5 or 10 years? And what is this diversity supplement? How is this diversity supplement going to help you get there? What are the gaps in your existing knowledge this is going to help fill to be able to put you on a trajectory to become an independent researcher? That's really the case you need to be making in your candidate statement. This is an opportunity for you to really, toot your own horn, and share all of the amazing things that you've been able to do to date, but talk about those gaps and how this diversity supplement is going to help you address those gaps, and help you to be successful moving forward. There also needs to be a statement of eligibility. I won't go through this, but that also needs to be a part of the application. Then there are other components like the budget, which we've talked about a little bit, your bio sketches for your mentors, some other aspects if in some unique situations, like if you're at a different institution. You submit the diversity supplement through ERA. Again, these are sort of, okay, so a few things to consider, after you've submitted the application, just please stay in touch with your program officer. The PI should stay in contact with the program officer to kind of find out how it's moving through the review process. If it is not approved, you cannot resubmit. So it's sort of reiterating the point of how important it is to be in contact with the program officer and the training director before submission. Also, we sometimes do reach out during review to clarify a few points, which is totally normal. And then if it gets a good score during the review, internal review, then we'll move forward it has to get budget approval, and then we'll get funded. As I mentioned before, my good colleague, Tatiana, is the point person at NIMH for diversity supplements. So she's a wonderful resource. If you have questions, you can always reach out to her. This is just my last slide. So this just really lays out the commitment that NIMH has to diversity supplements and how we've really tried to expand the number of supplements that NIMH has been awarding. As you can see, from 2019 to 2021, it had been relatively stable in terms of how many applications we were receiving and how many we were awarding. We've really been pushing to get more applications, and that number has been going up really nicely. And our success rate has also been going up. So this also has been, I think, a case of continued sort of outreach and really kind of the training team, hopefully working closely with potential applicants. And that's it. And then that's my email. And then I also included Tatiana's email as well, but you can also Google both of us to get our contact information. So I will stop sharing. Great.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Shauna, Stella, you're up.
Sure. It says that the host has disabled the screen sharing. Is that right? Okay. Okay. So I just have 4 simple slides. I will introduce myself. So my name is Shanna Stell Brown. I am a medical anthropologist, trained in several different ways in the state of Connecticut. I am currently an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology at Rollins College, which is a small liberal arts college teaching focused located in Central Florida, just north of Orlando. And I also direct the global health program for the college. And then on top of those things, I'm currently a fellow with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The program is called Interdisciplinary Research Leaders Program. And I am working on a team of researchers to look at HIV prevention for cisgender Black women here in Orange County, where the women are Black women getting new HIV diagnoses in the state of Florida. And so you can always find me at this email address. And then before I took this job, I was a postdoc for 5 years in the Yale AIDS program, just upstairs from CIRA. And so it's nice to always continue to stay in the orbit of what's going on, not only in, at 135 College, but just kind of in, at Yale in general. So for me, my diversity supplement experience was 2 rounds. So I had an application that was not accepted the first time in 2011, and then I applied again in 2012 and received the funding. So what I find is that it's interesting, I think, because the way it sounds is that you, as the candidate, are the one that needs to kind of find a lot of these pieces of information. But some of that information already exists as part of your application because you are linking into an existing project. So I was fortunate to have a mentor who loves research money and was the one who actually told me about this. And so he's like, hey, I think we should do this. And I'm like, I'm totally game for this. So, what was already existing, right, are the things like the specific games for the project, for the parent grant, information, that it has IRB approval, and just, the research design. So my suggestion is to make sure that you get to know that project. I was a co-coordinator for the parent project, which was an R01 that was based in Washington, D.C. And so those pieces, I knew, but I had to know them really well in order to write my pieces to add, for this application. And then one thing that also happens at NIDA, anyway, as far as their diversity supplements go or how they went, was that the mentor is writing a letter that's describing the research approach and how that person will be mentoring you. You need to have a timetable. You need to have a candidate statement, which I talk about in a little bit more detail on the next slide. And then just things like the proposed budget for your small part of this larger project. So I just going to reiterate that the diversity supplement is like a new tiny project that is fitting inside a parent project, and that you'll need to explain in a convincing way how you and this research project fit into that, and also help you get to where you want to go. Which is why I put that here, right? So again, how will the candidate fit into the existing project, and how will the mentor contribute to the candidate's career development? Those 2 questions I think are really important to be able to answer in as many places as possible in the application. And so the statement from the candidate is a personal statement. I worked at the Writing Center at the University of Connecticut for several years, and we read a lot of personal statements. And so my recommendation for writing personal statements is that you need to show it to a lot of people, and you need to accept that it's going to go through multiple drafts. In that, you are doing the work of identifying yourself as a scholar, and also kind of identifying again, how you're fitting into this project, explaining how some of those identities are underrepresented, how these identities are underrepresented, how your identities are underrepresented, but then also how that is not a deficit, but really a motivator for you. One of the things that also is important to cover is what's bringing you to this particular point of applying, and then identifying some of your long and short-term goals. And for me, I think it makes sense to be ambitious, even though I know it's a bad word, in research grants, but to be as specific and targeted as possible, so that the readers can have a picture of, yes, this is where you're at, this is how you got here, this is where you're going. And then one of the other things that I think is really important is being able to match when you get to the final report, right, after you've received this grant, being able to match those activities again to what you proposed to do, to what you actually said you were going to do, and how that was actually fulfilled. So the project that I worked on was that I designed the qualitative half of a sub-study for the project Seek, Test, Treat HIV, Buprenorphine, and Criminal Justice. And again, that was funded by NIDA and also the CIRA multi-institutional pilot grant. And so that part was, as an ethnographer, pretty strong in qualitative research. And so I designed the interview guide for participants who were actually already enrolled in the larger project as a way to understand better how these people kind of relate to their neighborhoods, because the assumption was that people would go to whatever closest clinic is nearest to their homes. And actually what we found is that people don't choose that one because people in the neighborhood will see you, and their stigma is so pervasive surrounding HIV, and also just sickness in general, that people would actually go essentially out of their way geographically to choose other clinics. And so we were interested in understanding how these individual people related to this overall neighborhood structure. And that's all I have.
So I
think that oh, sorry.
I guess we're passing the mic now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. And so I think what would be very helpful, and I hope is very helpful for those who are interested in applying for diversity supplements, to think about it in a perspective of you are applying for your future. And so it allows you to kind of have a more robust way or approach or methodology in how you are applying what is required for the grant. And so I like to see this or speak this as like leveraging your application for your future. It becomes an application for your future. And so the proposal should reflect where you see yourself in 3 to 4 years, and where your vision is actively in motion. And so when you are looking at the parent grant and you are reviewing the specific aims of the parent grant, where do you see your future in that grant? Where do you envision? Because at the end of the day, this is primarily a training grant. And so you want to think about this as leverage for where you're seeking to be as a scholar. And for myself, before even attaining my doctoral degree, I was a community-based practitioner for 10 years. And so I was already a practitioner, already very much in communities and building community-based work. And so I understood that the training for me had to come in, and I had to build upon that scholar piece, while still maintaining a practitioner methodology. And so by time I completed my diversity supplement, I started off as a certified alcohol drug counselor registrant. So I desired to be a CDAC. By the time I finished my training, I was a CDAC and a dually licensed clinician, licensed in clinical mental health counseling, as well as licensed in addiction. So had I not, seen that vision very early on, I would not have been able to leverage the benefits of this amazing opportunity in this supplement. It also helps you as not only as you're guiding your personal statement and your candidate statement, it also helps with your mentoring strategy, because it allows you to do this significant gap analysis. So I said I was very strong on the practitioner side. I needed to gain additional leverage in the scholar side. And so what does your mentor or your mentoring team offer you that can propel you forward in your areas of need and growth? Because of course you want to build upon your strength, but you want to also be able to acknowledge in this training grant your areas of short-term and long-term areas of training. And in order for you to know where you need to train in your development, you have to be able to somehow have that gap assessment. Where am I strong? Where am I weak? And where are my mentors so that I can leverage their knowledge, their wisdom, and their expertise? And so I built out what I like to call a cultural framework that was built into the mentoring strategy. And so there are specific mentoring strategies that are effective for individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. And so knowing what those strategies are, knowing what mentoring strategies that are unique to you, and you partner with your mentoring team to be able to build that mentoring strategy. And we can't always expect our mentors to know what we need. We can't always expect to know our mentors to know what may work for us, right? And so that allows you to really think through, what are the mentoring strategies that's needed for me to attain these particular training goals? And so the way that I approached it is that I looked at the strength of my mentorship team, I looked at my gaps, and I seen how it would become an integrated experience. What were the levels of social capital that was necessary? How would I be able to leverage their social capital? And thinking through this as a very visionary process that had a duality. Because as you are engaging in this training experience, I think it's very important to recognize that the goal is that you also one day, right, become a great mentor yourself. So there's a duality that's happening. So not only are you training and building, right, a training and mentoring strategy along with your mentors, but you're also understanding how you can then become a good mentor yourself. And so this particular methodology and training, I also, right, think through critically in my own mentees. I also do similar things in my community-based work, right? Collective visioning. And all of these, right, if we look at this experience or the actual application process as a building for your future, you'll really begin to recognize the benefits of it should you receive funding or not. It has been a huge catapulter in my overall development as a scholar practitioner. And so you could think about ways in which you can strategize on the ways that it's going to most benefit you in your future. It also allows you to really think about this from a comprehensive framing perspective. What are the particular models of practice that you're going to use? And a little bit of this, right, is I'm a practitioner first, right? How do I bring my scholarship to practice? And so training methodologies and mentoring strategies and how we apply it to research is very much a practice-oriented thing. And so thinking through that can be very helpful when you are writing your actual components of the grant or your diversity supplement. So I just want to just leave you all with these three overarching takeaways, because I think that everyone else did a very great job of giving the formalities and really sharing and showcasing what is required. But thinking through that you have these requirements and then you have this process-oriented approach that you can use in your application when you're applying. So I want you to think through ways in which you are envisioning your future, and who do you want to be? When I first started, I knew I wanted to be duly licensed. I knew I wanted to do clinical work. I knew I wanted to be a practitioner, and I knew I wanted to take my scholarship and apply it to practice. I wanted to use research to reinforce my practice, right? So understanding who do you want to be? How are you going to leverage this? And how does the actual parent grant allow you to use that leverage? This secondary component is, what is my training strategy for me to get to that future? What does that look like? How do I work with my mentors so that they can assist me in that particular process? What does my mentors offer that I need? So this is really not just your writing, but you are actually creating a practice model that can be beneficial, that you can use long-term as a future orientation to how you grow and develop. This process, again, could be used at any stage of your career. It could be used in early career, but it could also be used right as you are actually expanding and growing throughout the trajectory of your entire career, right? So this methodology is something that I use right all across my career, and I use as a mentor now. And then again, lastly, when you are able to better understand what your mentor has to offer and what you have to gain, you're able to be more strategic in how you leverage your mentor and your mentoring strategy more effectively. So those are my three main takeaways for some more practice-based framing that you can do to assist in your overall thought process and how you're crafting your story for your diversity supplement. And I am going to pass my time back to Daniel and John to open it up for questions.
Thank you all for those fantastic presentations. I think it really helps put us in a mindset of how to apply for these, how to identify opportunities, and how to be successful with them. We have a few questions that have come in. One of which is a pretty practical question, and it's, how can one justify a supplement where the PI is not at their institution, but there's still a long-standing mentorship relationship?
Yeah, and typically those situations happen when, let's say it's an R01, it goes to institution A, and institution A and that PI are working with collaborators, they're co-investigators at other institutions. So typically then, if a mentee, the diversity supplement candidate is at that sub-awardee institution where their mentor is working on the parent grant, that's typically how you can make a case for being at a different institution than the primary institution for the parent grant. And the way you'd want to do that is be able to sort of talk about, the work that's going on in the parent grant and how much of that work is happening at that institution. And then, or if it's not at that institution, how is that still going to be a fulfilling experience for the candidate? How are they going to be able to get the research training, the research experiences, the research exposures that they need to be successful?
And I will just add quickly to that question. That was me before I became at Yale. I was at Atrium Health and in their Wake Forest School of Medicine. And so I had a long-standing, at least a 2-year relationship already as a visiting faculty fellow through the CIRA Reads grant through an R25. So that was how I was able to kind of create a compelling case. And so if you are already an affiliate faculty with like CIRA, or if you are affiliated faculty already working with the parent grant mentor, then that could be approached. So I had a mentoring strategy where I had a primary mentor at the institution that I was at. And then I had Dr. Kershaw, who is at CIRA, as my primary mentor, but he had already been in a mentoring capacity already. And I was able to showcase that I came to Yale periodically through the Reads program, and how that relationship was already there, and this was just an extension of that opportunity. So finding a way to already showcase how those relationships are already formed or how they can be maintained is a way that you could build your case for that mentoring component.
Great, thanks. And Shauna and Ladrea, you both talked about the importance of finding a mentor, like first and foremost, it sounded like. But then there's this question of like, the mentor's already written the parent grant, right? And which seems to put a lot of, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it seems like it puts several constraints on what's possible in terms of your own independent ideas and your own, to use your conceptualization, Ladrea, your own future kind of flourishing. So I'm curious how you went about really finding your own research voice in a context where, someone's already said, here's what we're studying and here's what those aims are. How did you still run with that and find your own freedom within those constraints?
So for me, it was, I mean, and you're right, because these grants are even being written and submitted, a while before they're actually happening. And so the diversity supplement part doesn't happen until this is already until the grant is actually already running and in progress. So it helps to kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at those pieces like the specific aims and things like that. So I think what can be useful is in understanding how the project actually has been progressing and how some of its milestones either have or haven't yet been met, depending on the actual length of the grant that the supplement is being attached to. And that can be the way to kind of figure out, well, this is a new question that came up in the process of what we were trying to research at this particular point. And this is now how, I would be the person who's tasked to try to figure out how to answer that. So it can sound a lot more like, and now we've discovered a thing, but it's really more like recognizing the fact that the research is actually in progress and finding the actual niche that you and the project that you would be doing would fit into.
Yeah, and I will just add that this process is very career identity development. And I don't know if that's the original intent, right? When you are submitting this grant, but when you are actually looking at the parent grant, you have to see your identity in it in some way, right? Or you're not going to be able to find fit. And then if you can't find fit, then it might not be the best mentor. It might not be the best, parent grant, because really you should be able to identify yourself somewhere in those objectives. You should be able to see yourself somewhere in the broader vision of the parent grant. And I think that would be extremely important, even if you are using the NIH reporter and you're reviewing different, grants that are out there, or if you're looking at your existing institution or individuals here at CIRA, like you really need to be able to see what is the fit. And I think that is a part of becoming a scholar that I think this grant is trying to get to, that allows you, I don't know if this is the intent, but it allows you that level of exploration, because that level of innovation is what's required as a scholar. And so you have to be able to see what's already been done and say, hey, what else can I do? And how can I expand what's already being done? That's innovation, that's scholarship. And so I think this process requires that of you. The things that we ask of individuals that are advancing in their career and their career identity and developing as a scholar, this is what we ask innovation to look like. And so I would say that if you cannot see yourself in that parent grant and you can't see your career identity in it, then this may not be the best fit. So you don't want to squeeze fit where fit doesn't exist. I think that when you're matching a mentor, you're also matching or even matching the parent grant. This is matching for your future, and it could become a really beautiful outcome when you are effectively having the right matching process.
Great. Thank you both. That's very helpful. We have a follow-up question to the previous question about kind of people applying from different institutions than where the parent grant or PI might be located. So Eric has a question about if you're a faculty investigator, a junior faculty investigator yourself, but your current institution doesn't have grants that resonate with you that you could hook up, that you could apply to. How do you find how do you go about maybe finding those opportunities, and is that allowed?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to not allow that. I think you just have to, make the case that I think like any sort of research training award application, you have to make a case for there being sort of the making sure that this relationship, the mentee-mentor relationship, is going to work. So if you don't have any experience in sort of working together, or, it really sort of seems like it's brand new, that might be a little harder to convince the reviewers that, this is going to be as successful as sort of we want it to be. I think Dr. Ingram had a great situation in that, she had worked with Dr. Kershaw already, so could, make that case. I'm not saying it's though that has to be always the way that it works. But I think it's about making the strongest case for that this kind of relationship and this setup is going to work if you're not co-located. I think the benefit of having, someone at your institution is that they can really look out for you. So maybe it's not, even if you don't have a mentor who is an expert in HIV prevention or PrEP or, adherence. So maybe there's someone at your institution who could help mentor you on gender-based violence or, a specific methodology that you're really interested in learning. So you still have someone who's mentoring you at your institution, but then you're also working on the parent grant and learning other skills through that opportunity. Anyway, these are all things that that's the one thing about diversity supplements. There are definitely a certain set of requirements and eligibility criteria, that are pretty standard. But there's also, and the research has to be within scope. But there's also sort of a fair amount of flexibility in terms of what you're going to be proposing to do and how do you make the most, what are you proposing as your training goals? What are your training activities going to be? So that's where I think it is helpful to talk to folks who've already had them, talk to mentors who have already had experience with obtaining, diversity supplements. And as always reach out to the program officer and to the training director at the institute to talk with them about what's going to make the most compelling case for your application.
Great. And maybe one final question for the sake of time, and this one's, I think, pretty straightforward. In the budget, can you budget for research-related cost, or should applicants really be looking towards secondary data analyses of the existing parent project's data?
Yeah, it is really, the slide 8 that I will send around does have, it states there's travel and supplies, so that are allowable. It is a very modest amount. The idea really is that you are, you're leveraging the parent grant. So oftentimes we see like someone will, as part of their budget, request incentives. So maybe they're bringing in individuals that are part of the parent grant for in-depth interviews or a focus group discussion, maybe to talk about, maybe they're going to talk to folks who didn't engage in the intervention, like why did they drop out? That would be a great way to sort of, again, be within scope, but really carving out, like, maybe you're really interested in engagement, what helps motivate people to sort of stay in behavioral interventions. So yes, you could use some of the funds to pay for incentives, but it does have to come out of that travel and supplies budget.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. This was incredibly helpful, and I hope we see more diversity supplement applications from our CIRA community. I know we have a good track record of those, but it's good to see those numbers keep going up in the overall trend that you presented, Susanna, and I hope that that remains true for us too. Thank you.
Same. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if I didn't get to them. I tried to answer some, but I didn't get to all. But please email me and I will be sharing the slides momentarily.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.